Hi, everyone. My name is Sean, and I'm one of the founders of Evidence. And I'm going to give you an overview of our open source project today. So I'm excited to tell you a bit about it. If you're not familiar with Evidence, it's a toolkit for building production quality data products using only SQL and Markdown. So we like to think of ourselves as a code-based alternative to drag and drop BI tools. And things you can build with Evidence include reporting and dashboards, decision support tools, or embedded or customer-facing analytics. But really anything where you need to share data with someone in your organization should be a data product and could be something you could build in Evidence. The reason we're building Evidence is out of frustration that we had with reporting tools in our previous job. So my co-founder Adam and I helped build the data team at a large Canadian private equity firm. And we consistently ran into the same problems with the front end of the data stack. And namely those where it was difficult to maintain. And this is mostly because of a lack of version control and testing on the data viz layer. The way this would show up is we'd get an email at 6 a.m. from a CEO asking why a chart wasn't showing up or a number didn't tie or something was looking odd. And this would usually kick off a fire drill in our team to try to get that fixed. The problem was we could only really put in patch fixes because there was no way to use a repeatable and maintainable process because of the limitations of those tools. The second thing was it was difficult to build exactly what we wanted. And so in a lot of cases, we ended up having to try to hack the BI tool to get it to look the way we wanted or include the information we wanted. Or more often, we had to pull the data out and do things manually in Excel and put those into an email. One of the main reasons for this, in our opinion, is that we weren't able to include the right context inside of the reporting tool. And so a typical example would be you create a dashboard and the questions you get back are things like, what's in segment A and not in segment B, or what's the definition of core revenue in this chart. Those are typically things that you've kind of decided up front and you've probably documented internally in the data team. But it's hard to share that context with external folks unless you're able to put that directly into the report. And if you can't do that, you either have to send an email or you have to respond to ad hoc questions, or you have to take up like 25% of the dashboard space with a tile that includes the text in there. So none of those are ideal solutions. And the third main reason was that the tools were slow. So lots of round trips to the data warehouse. Anytime someone touched a filter on a dashboard, you'd have to rerun. And what we found after watching our users interact with the tool was that if a query took longer than like 6 or 8 seconds to run, business users and especially executives would tune out. They're really busy. They've got lots of stuff going on. They're just going to move on to something else if they've got to wait for a report to load. And so in summary, it didn't quite work for our business users and it didn't quite work for our analysts either. And as we thought about this, we realized that the BI tools that we were working with were really using the same UI and workflow for both of those groups. And we don't believe that that's actually the right way to do this. And so that formed part of our core thesis behind a new solution that could be built for BI. And so that's why we started Evidence. We're thinking about these as two separate paths here. We've got a better developer experience for analysts and then a better user experience for business users. So number one, for our core principles, a code-driven workflow is the highest leverage way for data teams to work. And so you can utilize things like copy, paste, reuse code, create templates that you could share across your team. There's a ton of things that working in code delivers in addition to the maintenance benefits of version control and testing, which brings you to number two. Reporting should be treated like production software. We have the tools and technology to do this. It's been used in software for a long time. These are the things that should be applied to data because it's very important to the performance of a company. And then on user experience, we've got that the user experience should feel more like reading the New York Times than using today's BI tools. And so that goes back to the context point I mentioned. You want to have context in line, you want to have narrative, you want to have definitions so that people have all the information they need to take the right insights out of a report that you've built. And fast performance is non-negotiable. If you want people to engage with the report, you can't have them waiting for it to load. So here's what we've built. Evidence works by connecting to your data source. We support a variety of databases, including things like flat files like CSVs and Parquet. You connect to your data source. You write a simple syntax using Markdown, SQL, and a library of data viz and UI components. And each Markdown file in your project gets turned into a page in your Evidence web app. So when you're developing, you're working in a local IDE. We like VS Code because we've got a VS Code extension. You can use any IDE you want. You'll get a live preview in your browser of the app that you're building. And then once you're ready to deploy that and share it with people online, you could deploy it using Evidence Cloud or you can self-host. But in both cases, the project goes through a scheduled build process. And what this does is it runs all the queries once at build time. So your data source only gets hit every time you build the report. And it also tests for errors. If it runs into an error, it'll stop the build and it will continue serving the old version of the reporting. And that way your users always have a working version of the software, and you get alerted errors before your users do, which kind of avoids the fire drill situation that I mentioned earlier. Now I'll give you a quick demo of what it's like to use evidence. So this is an evidence project. As you can see on the left, I've got markdown pages here. Each of those will translate into a page in my web app. I can add things like text here, and it'll update instantly. And then I'll just show you quickly what it's like to build a new report inside of evidence. So I can add a page easily like this. Let's give that a title, sales report. I already have a query, but I can inline queries using a SQL code fence in Markdown. And then you can get those queries to show up on your page and take a look at the data itself. Once you have a SQL query on your page, you can then reference it in any one of our components. So here I'll make a line chart. I can set the format. So I want to do euros, maybe USD. We've got a full format library. You can use a data table. Pretty simple. We also have great support for text. So if I wanted to do sales in, say, the most recent month. So sales in December were, and let's pull the sales column. USD is good. Sales were $11,000. So this is a really powerful way to template out a report and have everything get updated as the data in your data source gets updated. And then the last thing I wanted to show you quickly is a concept called templated pages. So basically that lets you build one page per thing you have in a query. So for example, you could have 1,000 customers in a query result, and you can generate one page per customer using a single markdown file. So I'll do this with the items that I have in this orders table. So I'm going to create a templated page from a query, pass it the item name, and now it's added that to my project. And so for each item in that database, I've got a separate page that I can link to here. So let's go to vintage jacket. This is a separate page, but this is all getting generated from a single markdown page here, and we're parameterizing in the name of each item. All of this goes into version control. So it's a great way to maintain a report, and it's simple, readable syntax. So even people without a strong technical background can come in and see that, oh, there's a line chart here. It's fairly easy to understand. Okay, so what we've heard from our community so far is these parts are great. They love that it's SQL focused. They can add narrative and text. It's very fast, and it's easy to deploy. But people also want multiple data source support, including non-SQL data sources. They want templated SQL. They want interactivity and filter and input components as well. And so this brings us to our upcoming release, which is coming out this week. And we're calling this Universal SQL. We actually released a webinar on this last week. So if you're interested in checking out the recording, I'll include the link at the end of the presentation. The Universal SQL includes three main things. So the first is multiple data sources. In Universal SQL, you can connect multiple data sources in evidence and query them all using SQL. And this includes non-SQL data sources like Google Sheets and CSVs. These can all sit in the same project. So if you've got like a budget data CSV, you can join that in with your data coming out of Snowflake. The second piece is the evidence query engine. And this is built on DuckDB WebAssembly, which basically gives you full interactivity in your browser and allows you to rerun queries using DuckDB. And the very cool thing about this is that it delivers sub-second interactivity on up to millions of records, like actually in your browser. Very cool. And then the last piece is interactive inputs and filters. So we're going to be releasing a bunch more of these over time, but at first we're going to have some simple components like dropdowns, which will let you build an input from your data and then have people select from that input and deliver the information through a parameterized or templated query to update the results. So you can build some really dynamic reporting with this. And up next for next year, we've got pivot tables and a SQL console, which people are pretty excited about. The last thing I wanted to touch on is our aspirations as an open source project. So one of these is that we're learning from software engineering and trying to bring those practices into the data world. And one thing we really like about software engineering is that engineers bring their tools with them. They learn a toolkit and start building their skills in that toolkit, and then share it with their organization and with the world through the open source community. We would love for that to happen more in data. It started to happen in other areas of the stack. And we've taken inspiration from DBT in particular, but we would love to extend this further into the front end of the data stack as well in any way that we can. And we'd love to build a community where people are comfortable sharing techniques, code, examples, plugins, and have that generate a ton of content that can help people in their careers. That would be hard for an individual company to do. And of course, we love working with other great open source projects. So some of the technology that we rely on is SvelteKit, eCharts, DuckDB, and DuckDB WebAssembly, and Tailwind CSS. And these are all fantastic projects. We've loved working with them so far. And that's it. You can reach me directly at sean@evidence.dev if you have any questions, you want to try out Evidence and need some help, or if you just want to chat about analytics as a whole. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to coming back next year. Thanks again.